The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's RISMedia Workman Success System and DocuSign's webinar. We're excited for you to be here. We have an unbelievably exciting and fun topic today on creating your unfair competitive advantage, and we have some great guests. Just as we get started, let me take care of a couple housekeeping things. The first one is, if you have questions during the webinar, please use the question section on your control panel, write them in, and I'll do my best as a moderator as we go through the webinar today to ask the questions of our specific guests. We have a lot of great information that we want to share with everybody today, and so don't be afraid if we're going too fast through things to ask questions. The other thing is, like we do on every webinar, at the end of this webinar, we have some great giveaways for you that we want to include, and so as you stay to the very end of the webinar, we're going to give you a website address or a text back number where you'll be able to simply put your information in, and we'll send you some great giveaways. We'll also send you a copy of the webinar and the slide deck that we used in presenting it today. As we get started today, one of the things that makes these webinars possible is our great partners. And we have a great partner in DocuSign. And with DocuSign today, Justin has joined us. And Justin's the Senior Director of Industry and Segment Marketing at Real Estate for DocuSign. He oversees an entire team for helping real estate agents and brokers transform every step of a very complicated transaction into an easy, simple digital action on any mobile device, I can't even say mobile device. It comes out so rough, Justin. You make it so it's easy to work on any mobile device anywhere in the world. And I think it's just fascinating. So you're not a new guy to this industry. You've been around for a long time, and he's literally developed products for Microsoft and other Silicon Valley startups. Justin, thank you for being here. I appreciate your support of these webinars, and I'd love to hear what DocuSign's doing to create their unfair competitive advantage.
Well, excellent. Well, thanks, Verl, for having me be here, and I'm happy to say that DocuSign is a heck of a lot easier to use than it is to say, I guess, with that description. But I'm really excited to be here for this topic in particular. I love talking to realtors and brokers about how to create competitive advantage. As a guy who works in the technology industry, as much as I'd love it to be true, technology in and of itself doesn't help you create competitive advantage. Technology is a great tool to enable you to create competitive advantage in your own business. And really, there are three ways, here at DocuSign, how we think about it. We want technology, first and foremost, to help you delight your customers. And when you go digital, you can really provide a better experience for your customers, which is, brokerages and broker owners, is your agents. Attracting the most top producing agents in your area, retaining them, providing tools to help them be more efficient and effective. And a key way that you do that is by taking the inefficiency out of what they do, automating a lot of their workflows. I've spent a lot of time speaking with realtors and brokers, and not one person that I've met in the real estate industry ever got into real estate because they love the paper involved in real estate. They love working with people, right? And so if you as a broker can automate that process, take the stuff they don't like doing away from their job so they can focus on what they do love, you'll have that best team. And lastly, being at the center of this, at the brokerage, you've got a tremendous asset in all the data that you have behind these real estate transactions. So how do you put that to work for you so you can create some competitive advantage around it? So why, at DocuSign, why is this so hard in the real estate industry? Well, this is a slide that really captures some of that complexity. Real estate has the most complex kind of transaction there is. There's a ton of people involved in every real estate transaction. It involves disconnected systems, a whole bunch of manual paper-based processes that really slow down the process of buying or selling a home. And all of that, disconnected systems and paper-based kind of slow manual processes often results in a poor customer experience. And at DocuSign, that's what we're laser focused on. So me, my team, and the rest of the team at DocuSign are really focused on connecting all of these different people, automating and making digital these processes that deliver better customer experiences. better customer experiences for the buyer and sellers of real estate, as well as just better customer experiences for the agents, who help them get into those homes. So, Verl, if you want to go to the next slide, what does this mean? How do we know if we're doing a good job or not? And so one way is, the way that you can create better competitive advantage by delighting your customers, the agents who work in your office, is if you can help them be more productive. And this is actually one of the stats that I'm most proud of at the team. The National Association of Realtors, on average, the typical NAR member completes 11 real estate transaction sides per year. Most of our DocuSign real estate users complete at least 25 transactions a year. We're helping those top producers be more efficient and effective because they're not spending their time pushing paper. They're actually spending time understanding their markets, going deep on trends affecting their buyers or their sellers, and investing in that customer relationship. We also survey a lot of our agent and realtor users on DocuSign, and we ask them about their process in deciding which brokerage to work with. And this is a stat that I think is also super interesting. It's a great topic for today's call. 73% of DocuSign real estate users, so agents, realtors, consider what technologies a broker offers is very important when determining their satisfaction with who they want to work with. So those top producers, technology, the tools that you provide are core to them. That's one of the reasons why at DocuSign, we've kept innovating in this space. And so a lot of folks know us for e-signature, but we've also innovated around brokerage solutions. So this is a lot more and goes a lot further than just electronic signatures. This is about workflow, guiding agents through the process of closing a transaction, managing the approvals associated with that. That's one of the reasons I'm also really excited about one of our guests that we have today with us, Verl, Reagan from R&I, and that Casey's done a lot of work leveraging some of these technologies and tools to create competitive advantage for R&I. So I'm excited that he gets to tell his story.
That's really cool. When you talk about the transaction room, do you mind just describing that a little bit? Is that a brokerage product or is that also good for a team?
Yeah, so this is primarily a brokerage product. It's a digital transaction management platform. So it helps everything associated with inviting multiple people into a transaction, guiding agents through that workflow, getting approval so the broker can actually approve that all steps of that transaction are completed to ensure compliance associated with it, and then of course the analytics and reporting associated.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing that with us, and thank you for being such a great partner of our webinar series. Our next guest, and I want to, with a high level of enthusiasm, I want to welcome Casey Reagan. Casey is the Chief Technology Officer with Remax of Northern Illinois, and he directs technology for 105 different brokerages, including enterprise solutions for transaction management. He's also the co-founder of RE Tech Solutions, Inc., and has served on the on multiple national advisory boards for Remax International. Casey, thank you for being here, and I appreciate you. As I was talking to you, we were kind of going through about what creates an unfair competitive advantage. I really loved your perspective as a technology offer in driving adoption and giving the agents what they need to have a competitive advantage.
Well, Verl, thank you, and thank you to everybody who organized today's webinar and for inviting me to participate. I think first I'd like to start off and just explain for everybody Remax North Illinois and what we are and what we do. So we are the franchisor for Remax in the Northern Illinois area. We're an independently owned operation, but if you want to purchase or open a Remax office in the Northern Illinois area, you'd purchase your franchise from us. And operating under our umbrella, we have 75 independent brokerages or companies that between them have 105 offices, 186 teams, and just under 2,300 agents doing over $9 billion in real estate volume annually. And we've been #1 in market share in Chicago for close to 30 years. And if you look at that, that includes being #1 in 240 4 of our local zips from Chicagoland to Quad Cities. So that's
pretty impressive.
Well, thank you. And so to explain what we do as a franchisor, explain a little bit about kind of a Remax credo, which is, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And the for yourself, we really look at Remax as each individual operation can have their own identity, develop their own brand and individuality, but they're backed by the national brand of Remax, having that red, white, and blue sign in the yard and all the national services and advertising. And as a franchisor, our job is to focus on the not by yourself. And so, in particular, myself being involved in the technology side of things, I focus very much on our technology portfolio. So part of what we provide to our franchisees is turnkey systems that help them operate their brokerages so that they can really focus on what they do: recruiting, retention, sales. Okay. So I have a team that, in addition to managing our portfolio, which is kind of all the items listed there and a few more, provides technical support, on-site trainings. So we hold regular trainings around the region and do off visits and things like that. But we support all the systems we have so that we can also help the brokerages in that manner. And that's a very important part of it. And that's our focus there.
So talk to me about your unfair advantage just a little bit, and what does that mean to you? When we bring up the topic, creating an unfair advantage, define that to me. How do you approach that? What does that mean to you? What does it mean to be unfair?
Well, and I think it really is what makes you unique, what you do really, really well, that's going to make you stand out. That is hard, truly hard, for others to duplicate. And when I looked at that from our perspective, what we do in the Northern Illinois organization is really focusing on strategic relationships. So whether it's partnering with our brokers or partnering with our vendor partners, we really try to build relationships that the key to that is focus on mutual success, right? And when you invest, all the parties vested in an initiative, it really helps drive better results. And we view that to a key is why we have sort of been consistently able to deliver innovative solutions to the market. So one of the next questions or premises related to the webinar is this question of, is it people or is it process? And what can one do to attract talent and keep talent in there? And I looked up online the definition of systems, because that's how I think about it. And so this is what Google had to say about systems. And if you look at that, it's very much along the lines of how we look at that. Systems are really holistic. In other words, it's really where people, software, processes all come together, right? All of those parts have to work together in order for something to work. And so we look at the answer to this question is really that holistic piece. And we've seen, from our perspective in terms of being able to work with 105 independent brokerages and see what works and doesn't work for them, one of the things that's really very clear is offices that have good systems are very attractive and very sticky, right? Have good retention rates.
Absolutely. I like to say that we don't have a people problem, we have a process problem. And so instead of attacking individuals, we attack the system and say, okay, how do we fix the system to make it better so that we can all perform at a higher level? And I love that. I love the slide and I love the thought process behind it.
Well, thank you. And I agree very much. So I'm going to drill down into some examples and things, but one of the things I wanted to point out, because we see this quite commonly, is how brokerages leverage their systems or their technology and their recruiting. And one thing we try to coach people is you don't have to be a guru. In other words, you don't need to know every nut, bolt, and feature of the systems that you have, right? You don't need to be the tech support expert. But in order to make it attractive to agents, you really need to be able to relate the business proposition to them. That is what really drives an agent. And if they understand the business proposition, they'll take the extra mile themselves to learn something.
And so what's in it for me? They have to understand what's in it for them.
Exactly. What's in it for them. And once they understand that, it's a driving force for them. And so real quick, I was going to give a short example on our mobile app. An example of how we teach people to relate that is with the mobile app is we give them a practical example. We sit them down, we show them, take your tablet to an open house, right? Show clients on the tablet that they can see active. In a couple clicks, they can see the solds. And with that, you use that to talk them into, hey, let me text you the links to my mobile app, and you can use this in a real estate search. And then when they download that link, of course, they get the privately branded version of that app. And then they would get anybody that shares with, their spouse, their friends, whatever, also get that privately branded app. And so that's just a great example of how we coach agents or brokers to relate that proposition. So,
you know, Casey, there's no lack of technology. I mean, we all as brokers have, you know, I'll call it a quiver of arrow, and in our quiver we have, you know, multiple technologies. The challenge isn't providing more technology to our people, but it's how do we actually use it? How do we get adoption? How do we go from having a really cool thing to actually making it an unfair competitive advantage by getting adoption?
Exactly. And so that's exactly it. And in the technology industry or on the technology side of things, adoption is really looked at as kind of the gold standard of success with your system, whatever. So when you foster adoption, that's the way you've done well. And so I'm going to drill down into this example, how we launched DocuSign over the last year and a half. And we've been lucky that we almost have 100% adoption by our independent brokerages. And so first and foremost, whenever you do something like this, and what we ran into is recognizing the problem. And we saw two things starting to happen in the industry. We saw this consumer wave breaking. In other words, clients were demanding digital signature and the convenience of a digital transaction. And that was causing agents to go out and start adopting all sorts of different systems. And that was then causing problems for brokerages because they weren't keeping up, right? Their agents were using 10 different systems and they're chasing all that down. So we recognized we really needed to find a digital document solution that provided storage and compliance for the brokerage, but ideally one the majority of the agents would want to adopt for their own workflow, so we could get everybody on the same page. So
makes sense. How do you actually do it?
Yep. So this is kind of the formula, and I'm not going to go into all the details because we're going to drill down on each of these individually. But this is a formula that we used in this rollout. We've used generally in all of our major systems rollout, and it really works well for us.
I love it. I'm not surprised that my chief technology officer has a system.
There you go. So the first part of this is talk to your crew, and this may seem self-relevant, but I want to underscore the importance here. This isn't just gathering data about what you need in a system. This is really the process of building those relationships, building your support network and your support network around this initiative. And we really strongly suggest doing this as a group, getting some pizza, and building a task force. Because you're going to maintain your relationship with these people throughout, and hopefully they're going to be validators for you as this process moves forward. So the next step, after you gather data about what you need in a system, is to start interviewing potential providers. Again, you want to continue to include the team so that they can look at demos and they can be part of it. Maybe not everybody all the time, but they have that involvement. And we strongly suggest using a little checklist so you can remember what people told you and what things are critical as you do it. But the one that I highlighted there is one I always look for when I'm working for a provider, is I'm looking for somebody that's listening to what my problems are as much as they're telling me their system. That's always very important to me.
That's critical. Casey, there's some kind of a funny feedback when you talk. It's I don't know if it's the phone you're on or if it's a headset or a handset, but it's causing some a funny background noise.
Oops, sorry about that. Let me try this. Is that better?
Yes, that is better. I don't want to miss anything, and every once in a while I'll miss something important you said. Thank you for taking care of that.
Yep, sorry, very sorry about that.
So, okay.
Yep, we're always looking for, again, that provider that's looking to listen as well as sell their product. So may seem obvious, but the next step is selecting that partner. And obviously you have to pick a solution that fits for your organization's budget, business needs. But again, that provider who's willing to show that goal of mutual success is usually the best partner, right? And so that's how we look at that. That's why we use the word partner, right? And then after you've done that, comes the behind the scenes setup and testing. There's a couple core things here I really want to point out. In particular, when you're doing a migration of systems, right, is to focus on roles and responsibilities, because often those roles and responsibilities are shifting, and if your team and the people involved don't understand what their new role looks like, it's going to cause a lot of confusion. So focus on that. Take the time to outline the procedures so that they really are clear about what they need to do. And the other thing that, again, is really important, and it goes back to this idea of relationships, is beta test, right? Expand your group now a little bit, bring in some more people so that you can test this behind the scenes before you take it to the whole organization, and build that group of validators. And you know, you'll also knock out some potential hiccups as well. So I think we can go on to the next slide. So I wanted to take the time to provide some specific examples, tips and tricks that we ran into when it came to launching a paperless system.
So Casey, as we jump into this, I want the listeners to know that as we were going through and I was talking about the integration of technology and all of the initiatives and the things that he runs for such a big organization, it was my suggestion that we use DocuSign as an example. There's multiple examples, but I wanted to take something that was recent that he had a really high level of adoption with. We don't always get such a high level of adoption when we implement a new technology resource, but because the adoption's so high, I specifically said, give me an example of something to get the highest adoption, and then let's go through and show the process that we went through. And so I want to preface that by saying that DocuSign's our sponsor, but the adoption of how we get it to work applies to whatever initiative you're rolling out, right?
Yeah, no, all these steps are very applicable to any systems rollout. We just happened, DocuSign is our most recent big rollout. And I thought it was very relevant, and this also points out how you can pay attention to some of the details that matter when you roll out, right? If you get those in advance, you have less friction in a rollout. So
excellent.
So when it comes to document systems, the key thing is to, first of all, centralize your document. You really, and again, with other systems, same thing. You want to drive people to a central place, right? The less portals, less sign-ins, less things they have to do, the better. So to the extent you can get all your documents in one place, great. And one thing we're going to drill down in here a little bit more on is checklists and tasks related to this, because for this is really a foundational piece of how you encourage engagement between agent and office, and shouldn't be overlooked. And signature templates, and when you're talking about digital documents, signature templates are huge to reduce the workflow tension for agents. So, for example, what we did is we went out and worked with all the local boards. We got all of the board forms, and we worked with DocuSign to get those signature templates built in advance, and offices were able to build their signature templates in advance. So when agents send something out to be signed, all signature spots are there. They don't have to map it, and that's good for your compliance, and that makes the agents really happy. So simple little tip as well. We paid attention to the signing order, right? We found on listing agreements in our area, the broker's always the last person to sign. So if you can force them as the last person in order, that manages a big compliance step that you might otherwise have to have 2 or 3 steps to do. But by logically sending the document to the broker at the right time, that was great. And then we started looking at task lists. So these are critical as a foundational piece. And again, the message here is start simple, right? The mistake a lot of brokerages make was getting either not do anything at all or getting way too complex. So this is a sample listing checklist, and there's a few mandatory items on it and some optional. You can expand from here, but this is the basic version of that.
So how do you keep your project from having scope creep?
That's a good one, and so I think it's really paying attention to the key thing, but taking an iterative approach, right? I'm not to get very techy, but the agile method where you iterate, start simple and get more complex, right? So don't try to take everything on at once, and don't try to solve all the problems in advance. So this is just an example of a purchase offer received task list, and something here is you'll notice there's only one required item, which is the purchase agreement. And this is a really good example because you don't know if this deal is going to go through or not, and if you make everything required, you suddenly have a hurdle for your administrators and your agents, and they can't get past that hurdle, and that causes your real business to take a hit. A nice little tip and trick here is to consider admin-only lists. These are just checklists that your admins can apply behind the scenes that agents don't even have to be conscious about, but provides more order to things. So, again, the importance of all this, of those task lists, is without it, you end up with just a big giant pile of things. You make them too complex, you have an obstacle. But if you start simple and build on it, you have a really nice foundation, and you create a logical way for your admins and your agents to interact. So then the next phase, of course, is promote and launch. Again, we love to do video and we blog about it, PR, but a big part is to go ahead and have an event, right? If this is an important thing, an office event, have multiple office events, try to get the provider to participate in some fashion, but that event is critical to building momentum.
So how many events did you have to hold? Did you do them regionally? Did you do them all at one location? I mean, you cover a pretty big territory.
So for us, we held at least 8 events, so 2 a day at large regional centers where we had between, say, 50 and 200 agents attend. So that's how we did our launch events. Again, this just shows the type of thing we did in terms of our blog and a video. So did a high production video, and then we did internal emails to promote that, drive people to build awareness, because that's critical.
It's a whole rollout strategy. You just can't turn the technology on and hope they come use it.
Nope, you have to iteratively remind them to get engaged and encourage engagement, right? And so that's critical. The other, oops, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go. I was just going to say, so the unfair competitive advantage isn't that we have a technology or a tool. It's that we understand how to use it, and we're actually using it with our client, and the client sees us as being different or more professional as a result of that technology solution that we've implemented. It's the carrying the thought of the rollout all the way down to the consumer level, so it increases the value of the agent in the eyes of that consumer ultimately.
Yes, you said it very well. That's exactly it. So another key ingredient in technology initiatives is just migration, right? Try to plan to be able to migrate your workflow, your legacy workflow to your new workflow without the perilous leap, right? That's usually not required, but a lot of people make that mistake and expect hurdles, right? That's why relationships with your vendors and your customers, your agents or customers matter. So probably move on. Yep, to the next slide. And again, when it came to paperless, I just wanted to point out one key thing here, because we've seen a progression, right? A lot of brokerages, initially what paperless meant to them was just giving all of their agents e-signature, right? But at the office level, for you to really get the benefit, you need to commit to this being your paperless backbone, right? And you need to commit that the documents are going to go in there hook or crook, and hopefully you're going to get a high level of adoption from your agents and they're going to just check their documents in digitally, but you're going to have to account for agents who don't. And so we've got some ideas in terms of how you incentivize them over time, but the real key here is to commit one way or another a document. Okay. So, and then
yeah, I was gonna ask, when you have multiple, I mean, how many technology initiatives are you running within your region and all of your offices? I mean, you've got DocuSign. You probably have, you have 10 more, 20 more?
I would say we have about 8 other major initiatives, right? But then those are always iterating themselves, right? There's always enhancements to the other technologies we provide, and you have to continue to build awareness of those. And so it's an ongoing thing, and that's why support and training becomes so critical to that, because that's really a key customer relationship thing. To the extent that you're supporting and training on the services that you provide, it's probably the most paramount thing to adoption, right? So, and then sort of like I've alluded to previously, technology is always changing. So one of the things we try to do is, as our providers or ourselves, if it's an internal system, as we make major enhancements, we try to use that not just to let people know about the latest technology, but use that as, again, as another relationship piece, right? We try to remind them of the value that's being provided by putting that out. So.
Casey, a couple slides back, there was a, let me bring it up here. It was a, sorry, going the wrong direction here. What's a one-page support sheet? What do you mean by that?
Oh yeah, nope, that's very important. So when you do a rollout like this, it's really good to in advance put together a one-pager that explains where to find support resources. So whether it's how to contact your own front desk or how to get in contact with your provider's tech support, right? How agents or customers can reach out to get that tech support. If you put that out in advance, it saves you a huge headache and a lot of friction for the agents, because they know how to get support and they don't just get frustrated and stop, right? They have a logical way to reach out.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for going back over that with us. As you've found success in initiating and rolling out the DocuSign project, does it give you a higher level of confidence in your next one?
Yes, and they're always a challenge, but we love that, and it's always good to have one that goes really well to help you with your next one. So
I love that. What's the next big thing coming down the pipeline that you're working on doing a rollout for?
Well, there's a few confidential things, but we recently just did, it's actually rolling out as we speak, social media boost product. So Home Spotter Boost. Cool. Yep. So doing kind of turnkey motion of people's listings as they come to market. So
I love it. And I love all that you shared with us on getting a high level of adoption and creating that unfair advantage. I'm going to introduce our next guest, and I hope you'll stay online with us, as I'm sure we'll have more questions come in as we talk to Rick a little bit.
Yep, I'll be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your insights and your thought process. I love when I talk to someone who's highly analytical, because the way you approach solving problems and doing things is so different from people with my personality type. I just, I like, let's go for it. We'll figure it out as we go. And we have to surround ourselves with intelligent people on our teams that say, wait a second, you got to think it through. If you don't do it the right way, you won't get the results you want. And it's just critical to follow a system and a process if you want to create the advantage that you're hoping that initiative or that technology will do. So thank you for sharing the way you approach things and how we can do a better job of it in our own businesses. Mr. Geha, let me introduce to everybody Rick Geha. Rick Geha comes all the way from California, and we're excited to have him on the call today. Rick is the team leader of the Rick Geha Team. He's a speaker, he's a trainer, he's a Workman Success Systems coach. He's got over 30 years experience in real estate. He's known throughout the industry as the Freedom Pathfinder. And when we hear from Rick today, you'll find his just general level of enthusiasm and caring for individuals is unmatched. He's truly motivated to help other people embrace their path to find personal freedom in their lives and in the buying and the selling of homes. And I've known Rick for some time now, and Rick, by the way, is with eXp Realty. He's got an independent team that I've watched him grow from, let's start over to a very, very successful team in just a short period of time. Rick, and I appreciate you being here, and I can't wait to hear your take on creating that unfair competitive advantage.
Well, thank you very much. I'm excited about this. I actually really want to talk about this from more of the perspective of a speaker, coach, and trainer, and not an individual running a real estate team. And I really want to thank Casey. He did a great job of showing what we mean when we talk about a competitive advantage. And Verl, it's so funny, you keep saying the word unfair competitive advantage. And while that isn't in the title today, it's so true that what we want to do is create sort of a competitive advantage that actually seems unfair. And I love the slide. You and I brainstormed about some of these slides with Coca-Cola here on this slide about can't beat the real thing. Like, you wouldn't even have to have the words Coca-Cola on that, and literally 99% of the world today would know when you say can't beat the real thing that you'd be talking about Coca-Cola. And Verl, do I have power to move this along, or does somebody else do that? Oh, all right.
No, I'm totally in control, Rick. You're just going to have to go with whatever slide I'm showing you, my friend.
Good.
Or tell me to advance, and I'll advance.
Right. Now, if you look at this one, I've been a Pepsi fan my whole life, right? I just, about 7 months ago, I had to give it up for good. But I always loved that they were always doing their thing to have their quote unquote unfair competitive advantage against Coca-Cola, meaning they were going to get their own audience. And, I've heard some statistics over the years. I don't know if they're accurate, so I won't quote them, about how much Coca-Cola outsells Pepsi. But the bottom line is that, most of the consumers in the world, if you say name a toothpaste, they'll name Colgate. And if you say name another one, they'll say Crest. And if you say name a cola, they'll say Coke. And if you say name another one, they'll say Pepsi. So generally they have room in their head and who they are as people for two of these, major names that have come to know it. Look at this one that's on the slide now, Nike, Just Do It. Literally, they built an empire, a worldwide global empire as a result of just the swoosh mark and the Just Do It. Now, if the swoosh mark shows up and it doesn't say Nike or Just Do It, people will do it. So there's a lot to be said about unfair competitive advantages. And one of the things that I liked about Casey talking about it, here's another one. This is what I was going to bring up, is I don't know the age population of the people on the call, but gosh, in the 80s, Where's the Beef was such a popular commercial that if you just put up Where's the Beef, people knew that they were talking about Wendy's. And then today, James Earl Jones is doing the commercials for Arby's, where they talk about we have the meats, and he talks about the different kinds of meats they have, and they do different commercials. And it is all about this competitive advantage. Now, I think with the examples we've given that you get the idea. You could say that, and what I started to say a minute ago is that you could look at what Casey says and I really appreciate that at such a high level, because I used to own, I used to own 7 real estate franchises, and that was in my past life. And I'm very grateful for that time, because it really taught me about how to separate yourself out. Some people use the competitive advantage of the franchise name that they're with. Like, for instance, Casey was with Remax, and that famous line, you're in business for yourself, not by yourself. But if you just say Remax, what do other real estate agents who are not with Remax already know because of the competitive advantage that they've created by the fact that, like, I could go to a Mike Ferry seminar, and Mike Ferry will always say something about these companies that have hundreds of thousands of agents and don't have a per agent production level that he feels is worthy. But if you talk to the average consumer, real estate agent about Remax, what will they say? Oh, that's where the big producers go. If you talk to another real estate agent about, what do you think about Berkshire Hathaway? Well, they're big. They, just from the name and the reputation. When I was with Keller Williams for 14 years, what did people say? Well, Keller Williams is a training company. Now, as you set this mindset about creating an unfair competitive advantage, no matter who the listener is on today's call, whether you're a real estate agent trying to create a competitive advantage for your team, or you are a broker running a real estate franchise or a real estate office, and the size doesn't matter. Look at what Casey just talked about, is scaling a humongous size company with billions in production, and saying, how do we create an unfair competitive advantage as it relates to bringing technology in? Our agents love us. They must love them for all of that hard work that they did to get that system up and running that he showed. The slide in front of you is a company from Michigan called Real Estate One. They're a huge independent. And what do? Their agents are so loyal to them. They have different brands. They have put their arms around teams and sort of decided that teams are going to be something that they don't feel is a fad, but that is a wave of the future. So they have to be not just encouraging teams to come on board, not just building teams, but learning about creating a special compensation program so that it's competitive and that the company still does good. Remember the term win-win. And not just they're doing training, mentoring, they're creating, they've created this great school. All of these things are part of what people in those areas know about them just by seeing the brand. Now, why do I bring this up? I bring it up because you have to start looking at what you will do to create that competitive advantage for yourself. Now, the slide in front of you talks about some of our products at Workman Success Systems that we have sort of married with Real Estate One. Why do we bring this up? You can create unfair competitive advantages just by simply partnering and using resources that are available to you that you may not have the resources to create yourself. In other words, if you look at a mom and pop shop in real estate nowadays, they have almost as many resources as huge companies because of what's available online and how many vendors are out there and how they can create some of these themselves. But it does take understanding about what is your values, what do you want to create. I used to say when I was younger in the business and I first started managing, well, everybody wants to go where the splits are the best. Well, if everybody wanted to go where the splits are the best, everybody would be at one company. And if everybody wanted to go with the biggest company, everybody would be at another company. If everybody wanted to go where the best training was, they'd all go there. The problem is, it's not really a problem, it's a beautiful thing, is that everybody wants something different for themselves. And creating an unfair competitive advantage means that you know what your value system is. You know what your core values are. You know the kind of people you want to attract, and that's how you're going to set up what you're going to create as your unfair competitive advantages. Now, Rick, Verl's moved the slide here. Go ahead, Verl.
So, Rick, as you're talking about that, the unfair competitive advantage is recognizing that teams are here to stay, and the company said, okay, we want to provide resources for them, and instead of just reacting when someone's going to leave because somebody else has approached our producers with a team concept, we want to provide that solution. And so the unfair competitive advantage is it doesn't matter whether you want to be a single agent or you want to be an agent with an assistant or you want to have a team. We have a solution and a program that allows you to fit with the company. And I do believe that it is truly an unfair advantage.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that you put this particular slide up, because one of the things with teams is you have several things. You have a compensation program for a team. You, as a company, want to understand structure and how teams work, so that when one of your bigger individual producers starts drowning in the business, maybe it affects their family life, it affects their time off, then the company can step in and say, hey, we have models and systems to show you how to build a team. What's the step-by-step process? And, you know, using, for instance, what you have up here, we have our administrative mastery program. It's how we help train. We basically can help train the assistant for the team, for this new and up-and-coming team. But these are things that, by the company offering them, creates in itself that unfair competitive advantage that you talk about. Now you've got me saying it all the time, Verl.
Sorry, my slides went a little nuts on me.
That's all right. So when you look at the AMP program alone, when people are building teams, and we look across the country at different franchises and different independents, people are building teams. They decide on their own that, oh my gosh, I'm getting a little busy. And sometimes they may know, do I hire a buyer's agent first? Do I hire a transaction coordinator? Do I hire an assistant? And a lot of times this competitive advantage comes from being able to be the person that helps direct and guide that. Now, we have to be honest here that Keller Williams developed a huge reputation as the company that had a special compensation program for teams, invited teams, was training on teams and everything. And people started to say, gosh, if you really want to build a team, go to KW. Well, you know, that isn't necessarily true. That just is what got put out there by a reputation that they built, and they built it by creating a almost sort of a you know, they say that what do they say is reality? Perception is reality. They created a perception that this is the company to go to get trained on doing teams and doing there. Yet there were other, you know, I joined Keller Williams. I was running a team long before I joined Keller Williams back in 2001. I had my own team, and I was getting my information from other resources on how to do that.
Well, and like, you know, like a lot of companies, Rick, they have a lot of great training and systems and process. And the key isn't whether or not you have it, but it's how you position it as an unfair advantage. And I think that's what they've done so well.
Absolutely. When people would say, why did you go to KW? Some would say, oh, I went for the split, but I stayed for the training. And, you know, when we talked about values before, you can't just have one unique value proposition. You look at Real Estate One, and people might say, oh, I went there because they're a big company and they have good training, or I went there because they're a big company, they're very prevalent in my market, but I stayed because of the people. You know, they have wonderful leaders and those kinds of things. So you can, each one, you look at Remax, people say, okay, I went there because they were the place for a top producer and I was a top producer, but I stayed because of the technology that they bring me, or the you know, the kind of support I get from my brokerage and from the individual office, the region, and Remax International. All of those things are what you call their value system in a systematic order, because you don't know what's going to please that particular agent until you've approached them. You want,
so Rick,
go ahead.
Sorry, finish your thought, then I have a question.
No, I was just going to say that it goes the same for an agent trying to build a competitive advantage for the name of their team. I have the Rick Geha Real Estate Team. I build my competitive advantage by stating in all my advertising that experience and excellence matter. That's what I said. I've been selling real estate for almost 38 years. Well, I've got to use the term experience. Why not use what I've got? But that doesn't mean a guy selling real estate for 3 years could use something that would create that competitive advantage. But go ahead. I'd love to hear what you were going to say.
So I have a couple questions for you. Number one is, you know, how many agents would you say you've recruited for different companies in your 38-year span of the business?
Oh, without a doubt, well over 1,000.
And so you're pretty good at getting at positioning. And how many different under how many different shields?
Oh,
or how many?
1, 2. Well, when I was with one company that changed names 3 times. They went from an independent to a Century 21 to a Coldwell Banker in a 9-year. So I recruited for the independent, and we were going by the logo, you know, you want to stay with an independent. Then we got, you know, we would recruit against franchises. Then all of a sudden we were a Century 21. Then we became a Coldwell Banker. Then I left to Keller Williams. And now, of course, I coach and teach and speak on recruiting all over the United States and Canada to companies of all sizes, et cetera. So I would say that without a doubt, that has been a very pivotal part of my career as a real estate agent and an office owner, manager, et cetera. Where were you going with that?
Well, where I was going with that is thinking about your unfair competitive advantage. It didn't matter who you were with. What mattered is how you positioned who you were with and how you put that competitive advantage out front to get people to come on board.
Absolutely. I love that you brought that up. You know, I was talking to somebody yesterday from the Berkshire Hathaway franchise, and they were talking about one of their branches called Real Living. That's in the Midwest and the East. It's not here on the West Coast. And talking about that you know, they were saying, oh, we're the place for teams. And if you're going to speak up and say you're the place for teams, what you speak out of your mouth doesn't matter. It's what's perceived and what can be believed by others. Believe it or not, you have to get that reputation out there that you're a place for teams. All of it, when I have been recruiting, when I recruited for Century 21, I was a selling manager. The Coldwell Banker down the street was saying, why do you want to go to work where the manager competes against you? But what would I say? I would say in my recruiting, I would say, why would you go to work for somebody that last time they sold a house, dinosaurs roamed the earth? You know, we had these lines that we used, but we used them based on the advantage that we were selling. And if that agent identified with that, they came over. The main point there is all competitive advantages work once you find the person looking for that. And a lot of it shows up in how did you communicate it.
I've been scrolling through a few of these script slides. These are text scripts. Tell me about these.
Okay, so these are different ways that we use these text. I like number 18 right there. So are you hungry, humble, and smart, and you want to make money in real estate, but you aren't? Then call me and start making money this year. When I put out an ad on Facebook for a buyer's agent on my team, I always say we're looking for the 4 following attributes: hungry, humble, smart, and coachable. So why do we do that? Well, that represents the value system I did. Now, what is in that sentence number 18? What is the competitive advantage? The competitive advantage there is we are saying to somebody who's been struggling that you will make money here. Boom. Nobody's been that direct with them up to now, so that becomes my competitive advantage. Look at number 19. You love your broker, you love your company, you love the other agents in the office. You're not making money selling real estate. I love that one, Verl. That's a great one. Yeah, and it's because of that. You know, people say, "Oh, well, on your team," and Verl, I learned this line from you. On your team, I'm only going to get 40% of the transaction or 50% of the transaction, and they say, "But if I work for this other broker," I go, "Great. So what's most important to you? What the split is, or how much money you took home to your family and your loved ones at the end of the year?" And they always say the latter, right? So
yeah, the split really doesn't matter. It's what they take home, what their 1099 says.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are a great series of texts. I hope people gotta see that and see what it looked like. Talk about systems and how systems make a difference as an unfair competitive advantage. I know Casey will appreciate this.
Yeah, and it's funny too that you said that, because when Casey was talking about that, I was thinking about our systems like Agiles and things like that we use when we're coaching at Workman Success Systems. But here is a wonderful thing about, like, if you're onboarding an agent, one of the things that I saw in all of the major offices that I've coached in, spoken in, or worked in myself is that if you were going to really get behind your competitive advantage, you had to have a very, very fine system. Imagine it this way. You're recruiting somebody and they're with another company, and it's like you're dating them. So you keep opening the door when you go out on dates. You open the door for them, they get in, you shut the door. Imagine that when you're going out on a date with somebody. Now they've come on board to your company. Now it's like you've married them, and now you're no longer holding the door open. You're no longer paying any attention to them, or You used to send them notes when they were at the other company. Congratulations, I saw you got a brand new listing. Congratulations. Hey, when we get a chance, tell me how you got that listing. I'd love to hear how you're continuing to be so successful, right? Now they join your company, they get a new listing, they don't get any notes from you. Everything has to be systematized so that if you are going to create this competitive advantage, that it maintains itself through this sustainability of a system, like we have here in front of you. The steps, the days till launch, everything's a system. So this is the beauty of competitive advantages, is that it's not competitive advantages, and I got to say this out loud, is not just for the big, huge offices that have more money. It's so simple. When you reach out to the resources, you have to create competitive advantages in every aspect of your business. From the minute you walk into the door, that you know how you're going to be greeted. That's a system. You know what the walls look like, what's on the walls. Are what's on the walls, for instance, really speaking to what your value system is? So
I love that. What you're looking at here is a series of systems that's put together to, when you bring somebody on, to onboard them and follow a process so that they see you give them a high level of support when they join, as opposed to just saying welcome.
Yes, and this speaks. Yeah, this orientation day agenda is a lot like what Casey was saying about when they bring on a new, a new technology. It's almost exactly the same thing, is that everything is going to be, so if an agent comes on board to a new company, you've got to be able to quickly make them forget their past company and say, this is how we do it here. And here's how it's going to happen for you step by step. So yeah, this is without a doubt the having these kinds of systems and using them. I'd say the biggest thing is that because of behavioral styles, Verl, and that's one of my favorite things to talk about. You said it with Casey, is that you said, Casey, with your behavioral style versus my behavioral style, you're going to be more apt to pay attention to those details, get the different, he said he's going to have 8 different trainings, 2 a day in big locations. Like you would just say, hey guys, let's get the training all done. Let's make sure it hits everybody. Yours would be 1 sentence. He would be itemizing it, right? And it's the same thing with this, but the problem is this behavioral styles cause that most of the people that own and run real estate offices or run real estate teams have a behavioral style that is either anti-detail or resists asking for support. So that's the beauty of, if you start with everything at the top, like having your core values like we have on this screen. I love the one on the left, that's our Workman Success core values. The one in the middle is the Lee Tessier team out there, I think, Kentucky, Verl?
No, he's DC area.
Oh, okay. And, and then the charity core values right there, where each letter stands for something. You can operate backwards from that once you've got that set in place as to how you're going to create your competitive advantage.
Yeah, so let's talk about this for a minute. How do having and establishing core values separate you from others? Is it just putting them on the wall and saying these are ours?
That's a good question. I know you were leading me with that question. What that does for you is it basically sets up who you will allow. Like, I'll tell you what, when I was working for that large independent back in the 90s, they would say, we don't want you to hire people based on the fog and mirror program. And I didn't know. I was new to managing that. I didn't know what they meant. I go, what's the fog and mirror thing? They go, you got a real estate license and you can fog a mirror, meaning you're breathing, so we're going to hire you. We wanted to have it based on core values. This is who we are as a company. This is who we are as people. We don't only put them on the wall, but we act that way. We are an example of those behavioral styles. We are an example of those values, and we behave that way in our everyday life. And we have to set standards such that anybody who doesn't match those will be basically shown the door, or as Verl Workman likes to say, we have released you to share your talents with our competitors. And I love that. But that's the idea right there. And you bring that up as, hey, do we just put them on the wall? No, not only do we not put them on the wall, but we want little ones so that every agent that we bring in is aware of these and is asked, are you able to behave and live according to these core values? If not, this may not be the right company for you.
I think establishing your core values is the ultimate unfair competitive advantage, and it's living with authenticity. It's really being who you are and surrounding yourself with people that are aligned in those values, Rick. And I appreciate you wanting to add that to the slide deck. I have a few questions for you from just people that have come in, if you don't mind me asking a couple of them. One of them, it says, hey, I just tried to reach out to Rick Geha on Facebook, but it says he can't accept any more friends. What, do you seriously have that many friends you don't have room for anymore in your life?
Well, it's 5. No. I got plenty of room for friends. I didn't create the Facebook algorithm that said you could only have 5,000 friends. However, you can actually follow me. The other thing I do to counteract that is I make every one of my posts public, so that you don't have to be my friend to experience everything I'm doing on Facebook. I do a lot of Facebook Lives. I like to attach Workman Success Systems Facebook page to everything I do, because I truly believe that that's why I'm with Workman Success Systems, because of their core values. I could have been coaching for any company I wanted to coach for, but because of who Verl is as a person and who that company is, I mean, obviously that is in itself a competitive unfair advantage. And also the quality of the coaches that you hire, Verl. The majority of our coaches are running multi-million-dollar teams around the country. So love that. But yeah, I don't know who asked that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So this is a question, and I'm not exactly sure how to respond. I don't know if the question's clear enough. The question was, how does Rick feel about monthly fees? Do agents pay monthly fees or not? I think they're talking about teams. And if you bring them into your company, do you have the agents pay the fees, or you pay them? Or I think that's the gist of what they were asking.
Okay, well, the best way to answer that and not pick on any one company is to say that everything is a question of value. So there's a story I was told many years ago about a man pulled up in front of a business in his Ferrari, and a homeless man walked up to him and said, "Wow, that car is amazing. I would like to have that car. How did you get that car?" And the man said, "He worked really hard, and I created success such that I could afford that car." And he said, "Oh my God, I could never do that." And the guy said to him, "I'll tell you what, where do you live?" He said, he points to the cardboard box. He said, "I live in that cardboard box." He said, "What would you do if you had a car like this right now?" He said, "I would sell it, and I would use the money to rent a little place for me to live, get me back on my feet, find a job that will sustain my style, and start over again." He said, "I'll tell you what, if you can bring me $2,000 by tomorrow night at this exact time, 24 hours from now, I'll give you this car." And the guy looked at him. He said, "I don't believe you." He said, "No, I'm telling you, I don't have any reason to lie about that. I will give you the car." And he goes, "Well, look, even if I believed you, getting $2,000, I might as well get, you might as well be asking me to get $1 million. I can't put together $1 to get a meal right now unless I beg for it." He said, "Hey, it's out there, $2,000. I'll meet you back here tomorrow, same time. I have to come right back here to this building tomorrow anyway at this time, and I will hand you the keys and the pink slip." That's a question of value right there. How much value does that person put on it? And that value, people always say, "Oh, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough time." That's crap. It's all a question of value. Same thing with the fee. The guy did actually show up the next day. The homeless man showed up with $2,000, handed it to him, and got the car. True story, by the way. And he did sell the car. They stayed in touch. He did get himself a little apartment with the money that he got from that and got a job. Now, here's the thing. He's found enough value in the challenge that he was able to go out and dig up the $2,000, even though the night before he said, "I can't put together $1 to buy a meal." The point is all about value. If I'm going to pay a fee, a monthly fee, as an agent, I want to know what am I getting in value for that monthly fee. That's what I want to know, because there's always the transaction company. If I go to one of those transaction companies that charges me $600 per transaction, well, with the number of transactions I do, I'm going to end up paying more than I would if I were at another company with a regular split that has a cap. You see that? So it really is a question of value. Now, if I was, whoever asked that question, if I said, "All right, let's have a conversation about the entire compensation program," because as a coach of real estate agents, top producing real estate agents, I'm always helping them to determine what value they are getting for what they are paying. That's the best way I can answer that.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter. It's not what split you're on, nor is it whether you pay a fee. It's really you know, what's the value being provided for what's being charged. And if there's enough value there, it doesn't matter, because you'll be able to turn that into additional transactions and revenue. And I think that's a lot of what Casey talked about today, was increasing the value that they provide to their brokers and their agents, so they can increase their value proposition to the consumer, and everybody wins as a result of having the unfair competitive advantage. Rick and Casey, we've run out of time on the call today. To get your free downloads of today's gifts, we are going to give you establishing your core values. We're going to give you a series of Rick's top 10 tips for recruiting and building your team or your brokerage. And then we put up a whole bunch of recruiting text messages that have been very, very successful. We call it crowdsourcing, and we've used some of our best clients' content and information to compile them into a series of 28 or 29 text messages that do a great job, just as a thank you for being on this webinar today. So on behalf of RISMedia and DocuSign and Workman Success Systems, thank you for being here. Casey and Rick, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your presentation with us on creating an unfair competitive advantage. And we wish you both the greatest amount of success going forward. Thanks for being here, everybody.